I think it's like, I don't know how to put this. It's like the facts that everyone kind of knew already were just broken down into 4 or 5 points, which
Yep.
were like, if you can refute each and every one of these, then that would be like the verse in Corinthians where it says that if you're able to disprove these things, then our faith is in vain.
That's right.
And the problem that I had when I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm like ready to debate this fully, is when I noticed that with if you just use these minimal facts, then literally that is such a minimal, how do you put it, standard to say Jesus rose from the dead. Because what would work under the minimal facts argument is basically if if a dude said that he spoke to a floating Jesus, then that would fit under the minimal facts argument, like after he died, and then we can add that to like the list of people that was like point four, people that witnessed Jesus after his death. If someone said that they prayed to Jesus and experienced him, then that fits under the minimal facts argument.
Yeah, Hunter, any thoughts?
Why are you moderating my call?
No, I'm just asking.
So, okay, so let's I think we first thing let's like if we establish like the minimal facts. Do you want to read them off to me, just so I know like what minimal facts you're coming off of?
Yeah, let me read.
I literally went to another building and a bathroom just so I could talk to you. There was like barely no any time anybody sit here.
I won't read all. I won't read the whole thing. First fact is Jesus' death. Jesus died by crucifixion. Number 2, Jesus was buried in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. Number 3, he was discovered. They discovered the tomb to be empty.
Yep.
4, postpartum appearances of Jesus, and then also 5, transformation of the unlikely disciples who basically were Christian.
Yeah. Do you disagree with any of that?
Well, clearly you know me, and I disagree with like anything supernatural happening. So when they say,
Right.
so when the fact states that the tomb was found empty, I
Yeah.
don't think that has, I don't think that has to mean that Jesus rose from the dead, or like the
Sure.
postpartum appearances of Jesus is what I was just describing. Like if
Yeah.
Peter claims that he saw Jesus speaking to him in the forest, then that counts as a postpartum appearance. If
Sure.
if I claim that I saw Jesus or a floating Jesus above my bed, then that's a postpartum appearance of Jesus.
In the same context as what the New Testament talks about, though, because at least the example with Peter meeting Jesus in the wilderness or something like that, because they didn't really have the woods, um, that would follow under the uh, like the post resurrection, because it was in the context of his disciples seeing him after he was crucified, wandering amongst them, right? But if you're seeing, but in you today is seeing Jesus floating above your bed and stuff like that. That's not in the same context of what they were talking about. They were talking about like a bodily resurrection that they can touch. That he, that they literally like the Downey Thomas story where they literally touch the sides and he had holes in him still and everything. So that's what I was saying. Like that wouldn't be in the same context, so that wouldn't count. But if you're talking about the same context they're talking about, then sure. Like so, the example you give with Peter in the woods, that would be on the same kind of context of
The
what they're
the
saying.
thing is, the minimal facts argument isn't in the really using the context of the Bible. That's why it kind of is the minimal facts argument. It's that it doesn't. One of the minimal facts isn't Jesus appeared before Thomas bodily, and he had imprints in
Right.
his hands, and he had this, and this. It's just like there are postpartum appearances, or sorry, witnesses of Jesus. Then,
Yeah.
and that's all we're looking at. We're not looking at like Paul's testimony or Thomas's testimony or Peter's testimony of Jesus. We're just saying, simply put, there are postpartum appearances of Jesus. Not to any
Yeah.
detail. That's just kind of it.
Yeah, but I'm sure, like in the minimal facts things that you have, does it have the details of what it's talking about though? Because I mean, with the minimal facts, that's all those facts derive from a particular source in a particular context, right? Like that's how we derive these minimal facts in the first place.
Yeah,
It should elaborate on the William Link article thing that I gave him.
yeah, it does.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
It
If it's
does.
William Lane Craig that you're reading, yeah, then even with him specifically, he's referring. I mean, his whole argument is from Gary Habermas, one of the leading New Testament scholars on the resurrection. He wrote a book with Michael Licona on the resurrection as well. And there, I mean, it's all derived from the context of the New Testament. So there's a specific context in what these minimal facts are being derived from. So that's where we got to use it from. Which do you remember the article I sent to you from Sentinel Apologetics on like the historical resurrection of Jesus?
Uh, I haven't read it.
That's okay. So what's interesting is in that article, my buddy Rob, the one from Sentinel, me and him actually wrote this. And what's interesting is when we were actually going over the natural explanations as to what and they go and this is why it's called the minimal facts because even non-Christian scholars that are New Testament scholars hold to these minimal facts that yes, he was crucified, yes, the disciples and relatives of Jesus supposedly saw a resurrected Jesus, but how they saw a resurrected Jesus is what they debated. And what's interesting enough is in that article, we only used secular scholars to debunk each other. We didn't use Christian scholars. So even, and just to kind of show like a non-biased perspective, like even amongst non-Christian scholars, there are issues with the idea of any natural explanation anybody's ever came up with. They have a lot of holes in them that are having a hard time plugging in. But that's another story. But I'm not arguing from authority or majority or anything like that. I'm just showing like even from a non-biased perspective, there's issues with it. And if you read the article, it goes more into that. Um,
The
but I
different
think
perspectives.
yeah, and it's non-Christian perspectives too, which
Right.
actually I think kind of, and we did that on purpose so that nobody can say, "Oh, these are Christian scholars, we can't trust them."
Mm-hmm.
Nope, they're not Christian.
the
Um,
the reason I find that to be disingenuous is because of this, and it's because, and I'm saying this because of my experience of since not believing in Jesus, is that what there clearly is, and you would be dishonest not to say this, is that there are clearly there's clearly a lot more evidence that Jesus did resurrect for the time than that there isn't. You're not going to find a single source from the year 30 AD that says like,
yeah,
clearly Jesus. There's a lie being told about this guy named Jesus about apparently rising from the dead. There's not a
yeah,
manuscript that says anything like that. If there was, then we would plaster it on billboards. So,
yeah. No, you're right about that. The
so
interesting thing though is when it,
I just
yeah, sorry,
want
go
to.
ahead.
Yeah, I was almost done. I was gonna say so. What that means is, essentially, what you do if you're a non-believer in Jesus' resurrection is you come up with
Yeah,
your own theory as to what you think really happened and why, and you can logic your way
yeah.
into anything. And people, especially secular people, with different sources who have never spoken to each other before, are going to have completely different theories as to what happened with Jesus.
Right. And that's why, like in the article, we go over those specifically to cover each different one. And that's what we use, like other non Christian scholars, to show why this actually doesn't hold up to scrutiny. So the interesting thing is, yes, there you will find more evidence for Jesus' resurrection than not. But historians, what they do is they take like for example, the Christian sources, right? It's the New Testament, Christian sources. So they take the biasness into consideration, but they don't outright rule it out just because it's a Christian source. Just like any other source for anything in history, whether it's Josephus, Tacitus, Cicero, Plutarch, whether they're Roman, Jew, um, Asian Minor, you take into consideration like they have a certain bias towards a certain group, but still they can hold historical value to it and show us something historically in the past. And so we have to look into that. Even in like the eyes of the writer, in the historical culture that it's in, and to its audience of what it's trying to convey. Now you do have, however, in the book of Acts, a recorded explanation from non-Christians on what happened to Jesus' body. The idea was that they stole the body, which is where you see a lot of arguments come from, and you even see this later on in rabbinical Jewish writings specifically that talk about how Jesus' disciples stole the body, Jesus' mother slept with a Roman, and Jesus is actually boiling in his own semen. That's actually the Jewish arguments of what happened with him. That they're like, this is I think 11th century, so it is much later on. But they derive it from, I mean, even like the Book of Acts, like where it derives from, like yeah, they stole the bodies, and Jews held out to the idea that that's what actually happened. Except there were Romans who were guarding the tomb, so that causes an issue for anybody trying to steal the body, even Romans, because they're master killers, even amongst themselves, if they fall out of line. So you do have explanations. It's just they don't hold up to scrutiny. Now the catch is like if there is a God, if there is supernatural things that do happen in history, well then we can say the resurrection can at least fall into a reality, right? Because we have where it is actually not only a legitimate possibility, history's done by probability, so we look at the likelihood of this occurring. And you, Bubba, as a non-believer, you still believe like the universe, at least there can be a creator God, so to speak, even though he doesn't have his hand, within history or anything like that. You still believe that there can be a creator God, which you kind of lean that way, which I understand. But if there is, then supernatural claims can actually be on the table here. You would just have to take it case by case, which I actually have articles I can send you on that as well, where there is a method to show if a miracle is legitimate, and where the majority of miracles actually are not legitimate under a hard level of scrutiny. And ironically enough, the resurrection can actually fall under heavy scrutiny and still surpass it. And this isn't a method I created. This is just something that's been done over time by outside Christian sources, and yet still withhold it. So, I mean, it's just something I can send you. I don't have it on me right now. I'm outside of the gym right now, so I don't have it on me. But that's just like things we have to consider and look at as well.
The trying to figure out whether or not supernatural claims really happened is a different topic entirely.
Sure.
And when it comes to me believing that a creator God can exist, I don't think that I don't even think that is supernatural, which is something that I've thought about since I was speaking to someone who you may have spoken to, his name Australian dude named Ebenezer Scrooge. He pointed that out.
Okay.
He pointed out exactly what you're pointing out to me. And it was I don't even think there's anything supernatural about causing the natural worlds to occur. Apart from
okay.
I don't think that being atemporal is something that is outside of the laws of nature. It's just like
actually, that is a good point. Can I speak on that real quick?
Yeah.
So, Dr. Hugh Ross, he's an astronomer. I've actually spoken with him before. He graduated from the University of Toronto. He's a Christian, but he is like he's a legitimate scientist. He's gone on. He's had conversations with people. He holds to science and everything when it comes to stuff like that. And interesting enough, he doesn't use the word supernatural. Because he thinks when it comes to like the laws of physics, Big Bang cosmology, things like that, it's more as a hyper natural concept, which means it still makes sense in the scientific world, but there's something that is outside space and time, which I've heard you talk about as well, but yet still utilizes in a consistent way of creating the universe. So instead of a supernatural sense, it's more of a hypernatural sense, which I don't know if you're more open to that kind of idea, which I can say supernatural, hypernatural, and I can go off of both because they both can complement each other. But hypernatural is another term where you still have a creator for the universe, like cause for the universe, and being in this space of time with immaterial, unimaginably of power to create something like the universe. Um, we have a we still have the creator cause idea behind it. So instead of using supernatural, I can use hypernatural if that helps.
I don't think that I don't think that there's something could be more natural as the way you're describing it. I it's just like
Yeah,
may say
it's
hypernatural.
not more natural. Yeah,
It's
it's not more natural. It's consistent with natural phenomena, but it's not limited by them.
it's like either something is like limited. Like what do you mean limited? I just don't know what the term hypernatural.
Yeah, so if you look at the book Creator in the Cosmos, second edition by Hugh Ross, that's where it comes from. Actually, I might have it in my Google Drive that I can here. Let me actually.
Expressed in an extraordinary way. The hypernatural just looks like supernatural. Describes certain things and qualities and exceptions of characters beyond what is considered normal or typical. It's like a black
Yeah,
hole.
exactly.
It's like a black hole is hypernatural.
Well, no, no, a black hole would be considered natural because it works within the laws of physics of our universe. We just don't know what those are exactly right now. But that wouldn't be it. Actually, can you? Let me see if I can.
I think that's something either breaks the laws of physics or the laws of nature or it doesn't. And if it does, then that would be something that is clearly supernatural. Like like law of excluded middle is what we're doing. And
Sure.
there's no saying that so even if it breaks I've held to this position. If something did break the laws of physics as we understand them, then we would shift
Yes.
our knowledge. Then we would shift our knowledge of the laws of physics, not unless it was something like it would have to be something that's like completely contradicts everything that we know and understand. Like if something broke the laws of gravity and just started falling upwards,
Yeah.
then that would
Like,
be
like, like for
supernatural.
example, the resurrection. Ironically enough, in order for the resurrection to occur, you can just reverse thermodynamics.
Hmm?
Literally,
You
you just
can
reverse thermodynamics.
and
Like
just
pretty much.
and just
What's
say
that?
and just do what?
Well, pretty much it's like with thermodynamics. Are you? I don't know like how familiar you are or anything
About what?
with thermodynamics.
Hardly. I just know the whole thing about matter cannot be created or destroyed, but apart from that, I'm pretty dumb.
Yeah, so I can think of like four where like you got like equilibrium is one of them. First law is like conservation of energy, where energy can change forms, but it's neither created nor destroyed. So that's what you're talking about. The second law is what I was talking about. The second law of thermodynamics is the entropy in an isolated system where entropy always increases. So pretty much like the universe was hot and warm at the beginning, and now it's cooling off. That's going towards entropy, right? And then the third law, trying to remember. Well, I mean, the third law is just entropy, is where it's like it's the very thing of what I was saying, like hot becomes cold, but it goes to absolute zero. So it pretty much is like energy or usable energy is ultimately going towards a kind of like a void to where it's just like everything's cold, nothing exists. There's like no fizzing of energy that heats up the universe in any place or any space that it contains. And so with thermodynamics, it's energy running out. So with the resurrection, pretty much you just have where energy is not in the body of Jesus, you just put that body in it. So it's reverse in thermodynamics. It's like, a cold, dead body that doesn't have the energy to live back into it. And you're just reversing back with thermodynamics. That's all you're doing. That's
Yeah,
all you can do.
yeah.
So
That's just not the way that it's portrayed in the Bible, though. It's not like the Bible
no,
is,
no, no,
yeah,
sure. Well,
and
I mean, you do have something that's dead, Jesus' body, and it has it coming back to life in a bodily resurrection. So that is how it's portrayed biblically. But it's just I'm using the form of thermodynamics as that hyper natural aspect where it's not naturally how the universe works and the laws of physics, However, the laws of physics mathematically can actually ascribe to where you just reverse thermodynamics and Jesus can rise from the dead. But it takes something that is beyond the laws of nature specifically to be able to reverse thermodynamics because thermodynamics generally is in one direction. But it doesn't contradict it necessarily. It can still work in science theoretically.
Um, and that's just if it did follow the laws of nature as that what that argument is doing is trying to appeal like to an atheist who says that like me who doesn't believe in supernatural stuff
Sure.
and still what it's still doing is essentially breaking the laws of nature still because you're saying that
Sure.
What could have happened with Jesus is that the third law of thermodynamics
Yeah.
could have been the reason as to Jesus' resurrection. Well, then that means that the third law of thermodynamics was broken, and
Yeah.
Jesus' body was warmed up. Of nothing caused it. Jesus' body was warmed up back to, and he didn't. And his brain was restored because he would have clearly been far brain dead. And
Yeah, I think, yeah, and I think what we would need to do first is establish like whether there is evidence for a God. Because if there is evidence for a God, then there can be supernatural or even hypernatural events taking place. Now, that's not necessarily the case, right? Because you do have the form of deism, as we talked about so many times before. But we can, if we at least establish that if like the universe has a creator, so to speak, and he was the cause of the Big Bang, then anything is open at that point. There's really like not any supernatural claim that can't be unsaid. Uh, but we can at least digest it historically after that. You know, I mean, would you think that that would be at least a good way of going about it?
yeah, so that since the beginning. I said that since the beginning is that if you can prove supernatural to
Yeah,
me, then it make me pretty. That would make me pretty open to supernatural things,
yeah,
and that would make me open
which
to
I
the.
agree with.
That would make me open to the fucking angel Jabril
Can
for
I
all I
ask a
know.
question about this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which
So,
I
well,
agree.
because here I kind of had the same reaction Hunter did there, although he said it better than me, because I get confused when you say you don't believe in the supernatural, right?
Yeah.
Like, and this is tell me where my analogy fails. Let's say there's some effect and we're looking for the cause, and someone says, well, the multiverse, right? And then I turn around and go, I don't believe there is a multiverse. Like, I'm not open to there being a multiverse,
Yeah.
right? That would be different than me just saying, like, look, I don't see like any reason to believe in the multiverse, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there is a multiverse, right?
Mm.
Even like I could say it's not science, there's no way we could observe, like, it's not like the best analogy, but what I'm saying is you seem to be not just saying like, oh, I don't have evidence for like a God explanation. You come down and you're like, you dismiss any possibility that there is a supernatural explanation, like out of hand.
I explained why I just believe in the supernatural. I've done it several times. It's that supernatural claims are truth claims, more or less, and every other type of truth claim, such as mathematics, history, science, something else, like physics, all these things have ways that they can be tested to be true, proven to be true, depending on like the laws that they follow, like the laws of mathematics in order to prove a formula, all those types of stuff. But supernatural claims do not have any type of method. They're like people make a claim and it's very contextual types of evidence that you would, and then you either believe them or you don't, which is there's no concrete method whatsoever. So like if I were to say that I saw there's an angel floating above my computer monitor right now, how would you go about testing whether or not that's true?
Wait, but Bubba, aren't mathematical truths presupposed in science?
Mathematical truths, are they presupposed in science?
Yeah, science already presupposes that like mathematics and like our concept of them is true to begin with.
Which
uh
I mean,
more or less, like
well,
the thing with science is that like let's say that there was a theory, a scientific theory that used the laws of mathematics, and then the laws of mathematics change. We discover something new, that then we could change the original theory of science. Like there's no issue there.
Well, the only
Whenever-
thing with that,
Go ahead, Thomas. Go ahead.
well, I was just thinking the only thing with that is like science presupposes certain laws of science or certain theories of science anyway. So to argue science for science would be arguing in circles, and I think that's what base is actually coming from.
Yeah,
with even
that's
like
right.
mathematics.
Well, the thing is, the fact that science has presupposed laws that they use kind of proves my point, because the laws that they use have been tested. They have methods behind them. They have, they can be disproven, and then we could change our knowledge of science because of it. And it's no big deal. Like the supernatural claims just don't have any such thing.
Okay, Bubba, how do you disprove these mathematical truths according to science? How would you do that?
Take a formula, for example, like the random formula that is used to solve the area of a circle. If I can show you a circle that doesn't, using the same exact formula, that doesn't work, then that would be a proof for this formula is inaccurate.
Well, okay. Well, what are you putting into the formula? Are you putting numbers into the formula?
Well, to solve the area of a circle, sure, yes.
Okay, but then you're not really fixing the problem, then, are you?
How so? Like, I would just like to come up with a new formula for the area of a circle.
Okay. What would that new formula? Is it going to consist of numbers as well, or like well-established numbers, or are you just going to come up with like your own?
I don't know. Take pi for example. If we realize that pi was inaccurate, then I would have to figure out how to make pi. I would have to figure out either a new number or I have to change pi or something like that. I don't know.
Well, actually, to give an example, the speed of light. The speed of light, even though there's a mathematical equation to what the speed of light is, the speed of light actually is presupposed. And it's based. I mean, and a lot of scientific models are based off of that specifically. So that would be like one of the examples where there are certain forms of science that presupposes certain things, but to argue it would be arguing in circles. And that's why I was like, there's some things with science that science don't account for that presupposes things based on a mathematical equation that hasn't necessarily been demonstrably proven. But utilizes it for the understanding of the universe.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And like, Bubba, let's go back to something you were saying. Like, so you were saying that there's these different. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I don't want all of us to be like, ganging up on Bubba, because I want.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? No. Are you kidding me? You've seen my videos of me in Christian chat where it's Gregory Fip. I had the entire call.
Exactly.
I had the entire call. I've had all of them. I've had all of you before.
But you're proving my point. This is why I don't want that to happen, because that was a crap show.
Right. Yeah.
This call has 5 people of it, and one of them's muted, not talking. So it's fine. It's fine to me. I can handle the 3 of you. That's what she said.
Yeah, no, but I don't want. But Hunter was talking to you, so I don't want to. It's not fair to, like, to him. Not even. I know you could take it, Bubba, but I just wanted to make this one point, and then I'll shut up. Like, let's go back to the multiverse example, right? Let's say through reason, like through mathematics or something, and cosmology, someone derives like the possibility of there being a multiverse, and that's a possible explanation for something that we observe, right? Sure. And then somebody lobs like the objection, like, but let's just say that for the sake of argument that it's not testable. Like the multiverse is a different universe, and all what we mean by universe is like within our membrane, within this higher dimensional, space. Like we can't ever get access to the other membrane, the other universe that exists. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? And we could still use that postulate within like our understanding within this universe to be like that other thing may exist, even though we have no way of ever testing it. Right. So I don't see like when you draw that in, when you say like we can't test the miraculous claim, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, right?
The difference between supernatural claims and this is going to be very simple, actually. It's like the difference between the multiverse theory is we have some evidence, but we're not concluding that the multiverse exists. Like maybe like quantum radio functions, whatever. As far as I know, that's the strongest piece that we're inferring a multiverse. But when it comes
No.
something like that, I don't know. But for whatever reason, people have to believe in the multiverse theory. Supernatural claims go outside of the laws of nature. The multiverse doesn't, and people dismissing it would be of their own arrogance if they're like, no, I don't believe in the multiverse. And
but in my hypothetical, we can't test it.
well,
you're quarreling with the hypothetical I gave you. Like you're saying,
then
no, like we have some evidence.
Then they should probably pick a different hypothetical, because the multiverse is a thing that people think about, like to be like unicorns. Like never seen a unicorn. Can't test it.
Like what I'm saying is that like it's possible that there may be a multiverse, and simultaneously that we can't ever test that hypothesis. Maybe that puts it outside of science, right? Because if science is supposed to be like things within like that you could test empirically or whatever, but just because we can't get access to the multiverse is not a necessary claim that it doesn't exist.
I'm not really saying
like
I'm really not saying that that's not the case. Like
you're coming in and saying the supernatural because you're saying like miracles, we don't have a criteria to assess like the truth of miraculous claims, that you are justified in now saying like they don't exist.
Sort of. It's that the thing is, if we were to get like a trans-dimensional wormhole that can access the multiverse, that is...
You're quarreling with the hypothetical. In my hypothetical, there is no wormhole. There is no wormhole.
Okay, so there's
no... You cannot get access to the multiverse.
Then to quarrel with your with your hypothetical, yeah, you're right. If there was absolutely zero evidence whatsoever and no scientists working on the theory of the multiverse, that doesn't mean that it's not true. You're right. But the thing is, the theory itself doesn't break the laws of nature for there to be a multiverse. And unicorns and magical Mothras do break the laws of nature, which is why
they're actually not and I think I'll let Hunter talk, but they're not generally understood to be violations of the laws of nature. But I'm gonna shut up. I'll let Hunter like.
Yes,
let Hunter work his magic.
Well, you know what's funny though? You know what's bad right now? Is that, Bubba, I'm not gonna lie. I actually would say that when it comes to like debating right now, I'm actually, like what Matt says, I'm being too nice. So I'm really not trying to like punch hard, because I don't want to like.
Hunter, I like people with a little edge to them. Okay, like I don't like what people are too nice. I know. I like a little something. Like, tell me call me a bitch. Say that I'm a little dirty. Spank me and call me a dirty atheist or something. I don't know.
I know you're no. I'm not doing all that. That's stupid. No, but it's like the thing is I don't want to go. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like, I don't know. I guess it's one of those things of like me and you have grown like such like a cool like friendship kind of thing. Whereas like I don't want to go too hard because of the friendship we have. If you were a complete stranger, I'd be like, oh yeah, well hold on a second, or whatever. I don't know.
Well, just calmly and nicely point out some inconsistencies. At least do that, Hunter. Come on.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out which route I want to go, because there's so many I can go down.
Just pick one.
Well, I mean, one of my favorite arguments is Kalam. I do think the Kalam cosmological argument does point to a creator God, and I think that the biblical God does fit that causational explanation. So, which Bubba, you hold to, I mean, that's the reason why you lean a little bit towards theism, is because of Kalam as well, right?
Yeah.
So what's interesting is, like, if you have something that's spaceless, timeless, immaterial, unimaginably powerful, then you would have something beyond nature. by that definition, because the cosmos, by definition, is all space and time and matter. So by Kalam alone, you would have something super slash hypernatural, something beyond the natural norm of our universe.
And this is where I stray a little bit outside of. I said this earlier, where I stray a little bit
Okay.
outside of a traditional deistic view, which is
Okay.
I don't think that the God, like basically prime mover of the universe, or the
Ooh.
deity is breaks the laws of nature. It's like if he's atemporal,
Oh, why though?
exists outside of time and space, then
Yeah.
and he holds the power of creation. That could be literally anything on a like power scaling. That could be literally just going and causing the universe to begin.
Sure.
Then I don't think that breaks I don't even think that causing the laws of nature breaks the laws of nature, because if it did,
Sure.
I think that would be illogical.
Well, the thing is like it's not like what or the idea behind that though is like it's like you don't think that's how it happened, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we think. What matters is what actually did happen. It's kind of like saying like, why didn't God do this? Why didn't God do that? And my answer always is, well, it's not like why God didn't do it. It's just what did He do? Did He do it this way? If there's a way to understand it, then sure. And that's where like even when it comes to biblical explanation specifically, people ask, well, couldn't God have done this? Couldn't God have done that? I was like, he could have done it a certain way, but how He did it is all we need to work with, and that's all we can work with. So if the universe demonstrates that something has to be timeless, spaceless, immaterial, and unimaginably powerful, and unimaginably intelligent to create something like the laws of physics, then in and of itself, then you would have. There's only two examples that something, or two things that actually fall in line with this kind of explanation. You have something that's timeless, spaceless, immaterial. You have like numbers and like
Abstract things.
yeah, exactly. Abstract things that don't exist physically, but something that doesn't take up time, space, or material or anything like that. They're abstract material, or an unembodied mind specifically. And an unembodied mind does have causal features to it, which is why an unembodied mind, in the reality of what we live in, has a strong causal explanation or a strong explanatory power for the cause of the universe to begin with. So if you have an unembodied mind, you have something that is that we could even still define as something as God's unimaginably powerful, unembodied mind. And like we can even talk about the timeless spacelessness, and biblically that's what the biblical God stands in for. So with that, does this cause, or would you talked about like Aristotle's unmoved mover, so to speak, something that got everything rolling, otherwise nothing can be rolling, which Aristotle I think makes a good point logically for that in order for the universe to be moving in a direction, something has to initiate the move, but you
Right.
can't have a eternal past, otherwise we would never get to here, so to
Yep.
speak. And so if
And you
that's the case,
and you can't have abstract things that are the movers.
exactly. So with all of this in mind, the causal agent behind this fits the narrative, and then we have something in past that says like, hey, this thing that caused the universe and everything in it, yeah, we've actually encountered with this being, so to speak. He actually came down to us, and as a matter of fact, so much so he came down to us, and we were so bad, he actually got crucified. His name was Jesus of Nazareth, actually. Stuff like that, And if there is this causal agent, and he does care about, what we do and everything like that, then we have really good reasons for like me, for example, to be a Christian. I have very good reasons to believe that there is a God. Better reasons than believing that there is not a God, or that the God is not um, interacting with creation. Christianity, historically wise, I have really good reasons to believe that, like, since there is a creator God that can actually work in and out of the universe, then I have good reasons to believe that, yeah, historically speaking, using the historical method, the resurrection actually holds up to scrutiny, has strong explanatory power, and actually can be deemed as historically reliable based on the histobiographies that are written in the first century about him. And they're Greco-Roman histobiographies specifically. That's actually, we actually have those, and we actually know somebody who knows both the relatives and the disciples of Jesus, and talked about them as well, ironically. And so, because we have all those things, we have a lot of things to go off of, and we have a lot of good reasons to, to hold to that as true, better than any other actual reasons or explanations for. So that's an overview, so to speak, so far.
And the thing with when it comes to the historical evidence of Jesus Christ,
Yep.
every Christian talking to a person who doesn't believe in Jesus
Yep.
is always an external critique.
Sure.
And I think that the strongest way to go after a person like me would be internally critiquing, which I don't think anyone has ever done a single time. Where I think that Jesus is a dude who died, a regular dude, not divine, none of those other miracles either. So none of those other miracles either. Who, sorry, didn't perform any of those other miracles, and I think that he was killed by the Roman, what's it called, soldiers, Pontius Pilate. I had no problem with believing those things. I don't even have a problem with believing that he was crucified. Afterwards,
resurrection.
So post-resurrection, sorry, no, not post-resurrection, post-death, I put it this way, I can get into the more details of others, I can get into more of the details of, like, I think that the idea that Jesus resurrected from the dead was in order to kind of push a type of religious political movement, from specifically from like Peter and Paul, because they're the most predominant characters in the book of Acts. All the way up Acts chapter 9 talks about Peter, everything onwards talks about Paul, plus all of Paul's letters. I think that they're and I think that especially because the strongest pieces of evidence that we have that the disciples died for their beliefs is, apart from the Acts 12:2, which talks about James, is like Peter and Paul specifically. Peter was beheaded, Paul was upside down.
Actually, who even has a stronger line of evidence than even both of them?
Hold on, I know it.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, he doesn't.
Yes, I do.
He knows it.
Andrew.
Nope.
Yeah, I don't know. Who?
Got him.
It's James.
James. Yeah, I said that. James, Acts 12:2.
Well, no, you said Peter and Paul.
I said James. I said James, Acts 12:2.
Oh, okay. Oh, my bad. Okay, because I remember you mentioned in Acts 12. But yeah, but James actually has the strongest evidence for his death. Peter and Paul does too, of course, but James actually is really as like one of the most concrete ones out of all of them. And it's but interesting enough. Okay, so with the resurrection,
Excuse me.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Trying to see if I can find where is it? Oh, so I don't know if you heard me mention this before, but like when it comes to like I'm curious. Other than like specifically like the thing with the host death, it with like the supernatural thing, we already can at least inquire that supernatural things can occur if we have a creator God. That like a theistic, right? Like that is definitely possible, and I would say probable. Given that, like, if we have a creator, then historically, then we even have supernatural things. Because you have a supernatural being that can intermingle with creation. So if you have a God, you have that. So that's not out
I think
of question.
I think that there's a stark difference, however, in trying to find something extraordinary. I won't claim supernatural at this moment, but like something extraordinary had to occur to create the universe, which is like the deepest question that science has ever tried to answer in the history of humanity, versus something that a guy did once, which was supposedly die and resurrect. back in
So,
30 AD.
well, interesting enough. So, when it comes to the universe specifically, now science can't account for everything. You would agree with that?
It's everything within the natural world. So I think that's
Not even that.
like how so? Like science.
Like for example, science can't answer like why something is, or if something is beautiful or not, or even when it comes, we were talking about morality before. Science can't attain what how something is moral and how something is not. So and that's within the realm. So, and science can't, for example, answer the question why we exist. That's a philosophical question, not a scientific conclusion.
Yeah, sure.
So with
That's
that being the case, with that, would you say?
um yeah, I think that science and a couple other subjects is the way my current response to precepts is that I am able to justify my knowledge due to my own rationalism and empiricism. And
True.
I think that
That's not
science
doing
falls under the realm of empiricism. Of like I can and the same with so I think every subject and every single subject matter uses all those things: empiricism and rationalism. Science uses mostly empiricism, and then you come to a rational conclusion because of it. Philosophy is
True.
like 99% rationalism, 0% empiricism, and
Yeah,
you come to your conclusions that way, and
yeah.
it's
Even in yeah, even in epistemic justification with the scientific method, um, the scientific method like assumes that like observation, experimentation, reasoning leads to truth, but science can't scientifically prove that. Um, will prove that the scientific method itself is valid. The principle, that principle itself too, is also a philosophical presupposition, not a
Right.
scientific conclusion.
what
Which
it,
I'm not saying that's, and I'm not saying it's wrong or anything like that. Like I agree, the scientific method is very reliable. I believe we use our observation, experimentation, or reasoning to lead the truth. But the scientific method assumes that, but it can't scientifically prove that the scientific method itself is valid. That's a philosophical presupposition. And I'm not even a presuppositionalist, so I'm not arguing presuppositions. But that is a philosophical aspect, not a scientific conclusion.
and that's I'm not sure what point you're getting at though. It's like I agree that science can't answer why I shouldn't shoot my mother in the face, or like why I
Yeah,
shouldn't why the how the scientific, like what is good and bad, it cannot be shown by science.
right. And that's what I was talking about. Like science accounting for everything, right? So even in the natural realm that we live in, it also doesn't account for everything. So that's the point I was making with that. So when it comes to that which is beyond our natural, aka the universe, then we can use other means of inference to determine truth that isn't relied upon solely scientific. You can come up with philosophical conclusions. You can come up with many different things that aren't necessarily entailed by scientific, because science doesn't isn't the only way coming out with truth. Um, at least when it like science pretty much tells us how things work, but it doesn't tell us why things work, or why these things specifically, why they even happen in the first place. They just pretty much explain how they. So then we can answer the question why things do happen, but we don't need science to do that. So that's why, actually, this is the reason why I wanted to get into philosophy as my double major. So interesting enough, when it comes to the idea of creator God, specifically, if we can inference that there is a creator, or that there is a cause for the universe, and we can inference that there's a creator, it's within the realm of a certain explanation, and that explanation fits a certain ideology. Well, like for example, I'm a Christian because I think it is a specific ideology that explains the reality of what we live in. Not by presuppositions, by anything. I'm not a presuppositionalist, but because of things like science, philosophy, history, mathematics, and things like that. Um, and so, given that I think we have really good reasons to believe that there is a God, it's not so hard for me to see God placing his hand in history. Which I mean, you have to look at multiple different religions, and I did directed research over religions. So I looked at Islam, Mormonism, Jehovah Witness, Judaism, Christianity, and Egyptology as well. And that's, I mean, ultimately, long story short, that's how I came to be a Christian. So historically speaking, is the New Testament's documentation is reliable? And if so, why? Or how are they in the first place? I think that would be like a good next way to go about it, maybe.
Um,
You,
well, yeah, I heard you. It's the still ultimately the reason that you can reason your way to any religion, literally any of them, especially the top five: Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, and the other four. And the reason that you come to any of those conclusions would be from your own rational thought, more or less, and those things like they will come down to your preferences, I believe. And even if you, I think that you can reason your way to say that if I were to say that literally every single claim that religion makes is true, from Islam to Christianity to Hinduism, ultimately the reason that I would pick any one of them would be because I want to. Or I prefer these things over Christianity.
I really, yeah, I don't think so though. I think honestly, like sometimes like people are just convicted and they have nowhere else to run. So if by denying it, they're not delusional at a certain point to where they're just, I mean, some people call it like suppressing the truth, and I'm not even saying that or anything. It's just like if you can't know what you, or once you know something, you can't unknow it. So once you do know something to be the case, and there's like, and you have evidence that points to this being the case, it's really hard to deny that once the evidence is all there. So, so I don't think it's by wanting it to be. If you don't want it to be, it's never going to be open whatsoever. But I'm not so. The same goes like I'm open minded, but I'm not so open minded that my brain falls out along with it. Like I'm open minded to seeing what the evidence shows, and if the evidence does show to be valid, then I go where the evidence leads me to. And so that's why, like specifically, I'm not Muslim because I don't see the evidence of it pertaining to be true. Even the Quranic challenge that's given in the front of every English translation of the Quran, I think that's already been fulfilled, as you've seen in my conversation with Abdul Aziz with the contradiction in the Quran. And then yeah, and then also the example with where we know these stories derive from, and that there's not only just one Arabic Quran specifically. That there are certain things that were forgotten, Satan actually came and told Muhammad certain things. But there's examples left and right. But when it comes to the Christian idea behind it, it's the resurrection, and the idea is
Slander.
if Jesus lived, he died, and the apostles and disciples saw him after he rose from the dead, then what is it that they saw, and is historically the case? And so, if we can really substantiate that the disciples did experience something, we can at least go from that. Which I think, historically speaking, as Greco-Roman historiographies specifically are being written about this person Jesus, they're writing from eyewitness testimony of what they experienced, and because of what they experienced, this is what this is why we have what we have today. And there's certain criterias that are being used to demonstrate these things actually did happen. Like you probably heard like criteria of embarrassment. If it was made up, they wouldn't use like women, which I'm sure you've heard of, right? But
Bubba,
So what was that last part?
the woman testimony.
The woman testimony.
criteria of embarrassment.
Oh yeah, criteria of embarrassment is okay.
Yeah.
It's the thing is that doesn't make it. It's tough to say that it doesn't make it true though. Like if
No, correct. Yeah, but it doesn't make it true. That's correct. What it does show is that if it was to be made up, they wouldn't have used this because it would more embarrass them to show them to be reliable. Which, ironically, nowadays, that actually does show them to be more reliable because if they would have made it up, they wouldn't write embarrassing things about themselves.
the
They would write something more heroistic or more true or more within the cultural norm of something high value, not low and dumb.
What standard are you saying though that there's a which part are you talking about like Jesus being whipped and killed and crucified? That's the embarrassing part for the on the side of the
No,
disciples
no, no. He's talking about the appearances seen by
Actually,
the woman,
by women.
right?
actually,
Uh,
well, no, actually, that would be a thing too. Even as the idea of like a Lord and Savior being crucified, because there's the thing called the Alexamenos graffiti, where Christians were being mocked because they believe um, in a crucified Savior, and
I
so that would
I
be an
say
interesting thing.
I
Well,
say the thing is like not even those things are fall under the
Lua,
criteria of
oh,
embarrassment because of the end of the story. The the Messiah that they're speaking of and sorry that the person that they're following around for 2 years in the Gospels dies in the story resurrects at the end. So I don't think that it matters that their story that they're telling is that it was whipped, killed, flogged, spat on, shit on, pissed on, any of these things because he like
yeah.
the dude resurrects at the end.
You know what's interesting though? So the resurrection actually, the reason why you don't see much things against the resurrection is because back then in Greco-Roman times, supernatural claims were of the norm, and that was a world that is predominantly okay with supernatural things happening. They explain things more than like the way they explain things is like in line with supernatural beliefs and stuff like that. So him bodily resurrected or the idea of the resurrection isn't necessarily like something that they would be like, oh yeah, of course. But you believe in a dying, crucified savior, like what the crap is wrong with you? Like that would actually be more of a point of critique than supernatural thing happening because they believe in supernatural things, so they didn't deny the resurrection. Okay, what are you laughing at? You're laughing at something, so I know you're not.
What am I? I'm laughing at the side chat. Sorry.
I don't even
Well,
know what's
stop
happening.
it.
I don't even
It's
know what's happening.
nothing. I was just he said rate this edit, and I said 0 out of 10. There's no trains in it, and then he posted a GIF. Okay.
Gotcha.
I'm paying attention.
Take it.
You better be.
No, but ultimately, though, the thing is like criteria of embarrassment actually would be a bigger thing than a supernatural claim back then in that time period because they held to supernatural things happening. So Romans and Jews and everything, a resurrection wouldn't have been something that they would have talked against. It would have been the embarrassing things like how weak and puny and a load of crap your savior is. Like my savior is Zeus, or my savior is Yahweh, the God Almighty, or my savior is Jupiter or something like that. Like these, they always saw as who their savior was, not what their God did, so to speak. You good over there?
Yeah, it's I. The thing is,
You're being deflected on Snapchat.
no,
Don't check out, Bubba.
I'm not checking out. It's that I heard everything he said. The thing is that the way that they display Jesus is that he is the same God. Well, even if I actually disagree that Trinity was being taught in like early Christianity, but still, the
You
idea,
disagree?
um, with in regards to like Matthew, Mark, and Matthew and Paul and Peter
Oh,
in the very beginning, but maybe not, probably not Irenaeus or Ignatius or
no, I would even
John.
say even the Book of Mark even demonstrates that. But
But
that's the earliest one.
they're claiming that he's the Messiah that is prophesied hundreds of years before, in the Old Testament, especially in Matthew, where he's portrayed that way. We're quoting the Old Testament 60 something times. So I
Oh,
think
this is
that I think
a
that, I
great
think
guy.
I think that what you're saying is still they're not portraying Jesus to be this weak, poor, old, feeble man who's being crucified, and this is the command that they're following. Some weak, feeble dude. No, like
He wasn't weak.
he's the savior of the
He was in his
world. He's the savior of the
Oh,
world.
well,
he was
remember
in his
though,
primes, bro. He was in his 30s.
I'm
but well, actually, if you notice though, they do portray him as a weak person because remember what happened when he was crucified? What did all the disciples do?
they them scattering after he died, believing that they were wrong, is still doesn't negate the end of the story where Jesus resurrects and then they're all like, oh shit,
Sure. Yeah, but the point I'm making out though is that the story is portraying Jesus as a weak, suffering, like the suffering servant aspect, so to speak. And so, what's interesting enough is that they do portray him as a weak individual that can't save themselves. So much so that he can't, like even in the Romans were like, if you were the son God, if you are this so powerful king, why don't you save yourself from the cross? And like, you just have them mocking him, doing all this, portraying him as a weak person. So
Yeah.
in the story, he is portrayed as a weak person, but you're talking about specific like resurrection.
Also,
So
I'm also saying like what I said 10 minutes ago, which is that it literally doesn't matter if he was whipped, flogged, spat on, insulted, pissed on, all these things. Like he could be seen as like a little. He could be seen as a weak, feeble old man, or like just like a. But still, the end of the story is that he resurrects and he's the savior of the entire world, of
yeah, and so that's why I'm
everyone's sins.
right. But the interesting thing though is that if they were to make up certain things about Jesus, so to speak,